All right, today we're diving into a really interesting one. It's the 2025 Acer Nitro V15, a laptop that's kind of weird because it's mixing some brand new, cutting edge stuff with some surprisingly old tech. So that's the big question we're going to tackle, right? Does this strange combo create some kind of budget friendly powerhouse? Or is it just a deeply flawed machine? Let's figure it out. So, what exactly makes this machine so odd? Well, you can pretty much sum up the whole laptop with one idea: this constant battle going on between the new and the old. Okay, so check this out. On one hand, you get a powerful next-generation graphics card, the RTX 5050, and a really solid Intel Core i7 processor. That's the good stuff. But on the other hand, it's all packed into a chassis from last year, and this is a big one, it uses older, slower DDR4 RAM, which could really hold the whole system back. So specs on paper are one thing, but how does this thing actually perform when you're playing a game? This is where things get really interesting. Let's look at the numbers. And here is where that new tech just absolutely shines. Take a super demanding game like Alan Wake 2. Without any tricks, you get around 40 frames per second. You know, it's playable, but not great. Now watch what happens when you flip the switch on NVIDIA's AI magic. DLSS and frame generation kick in and boom, you jump to a staggering 150 frames per second. That's not just better, it's a completely different experience. And this isn't a one-time thing. We see the exact same story in Indiana Jones. You go from a perfectly good 65 frames per second to an insane 180. For a game with a lot of action, that extra smoothness from the AI it's a massive deal. It makes everything feel so much more responsive. And the pattern just keeps going. Even in a beautiful game like Ghost of Tsushima, you go from about 43 FPS to over 110. That's not just making it smoother, it gives you so much breathing room to crank up the graphics even more. This isn't a gimmick, you guys. It is a legitimate game changer. So the big takeaway here is that even though the GPU itself only has a 75-watt power limit, which is kind of low, NVIDIA's DLSS technology pretty much makes that irrelevant. You can still get these incredibly high frame rates. It just goes to show how powerful software has become. Okay, but it can't all be good news, right? To deliver that kind of performance at this price, Acer had to make some pretty big sacrifices somewhere else. So let's talk about the catch. There are basically three major problems with this laptop, and they're just as important as those high frame rates. Let's break them down one by one. The first problem starts with the power adapter they give you. It's a 135-watt brick. And honestly, this is a huge issue. It's just not powerful enough to feed the hardware when you're really pushing it. No, you heard that right. When you put the laptop in its highest turbo performance mode for gaming, the battery actually starts to drain, even while it's plugged into the wall. You'll lose about 1% of your charge every 10 minutes. I mean, that's a pretty fundamental design flaw. All right, next up, the screen. Now, it has a fantastic 165 Hz refresh rate, which is perfect for high frame rate gaming. You can actually see all those extra frames the GPU is pushing out. But if you plan on doing any kind of creative work, you're going to have a bad time. And here's why. In simple terms, this screen only covers about 45% of the NTSC color space. For perspective, the standard for basically all creative work is 100% sRGB. What this means for you is that the colors are going to look washed out, kind of dull and inaccurate. So it's a terrible choice if you're a photographer or video editor. And that brings us right back to that bottleneck we talked about at the beginning, the memory. This is where using that old tech really starts to hurt the new tech. Okay, think of it like this. The Core i7 processor in here is like a Ferrari. It's built to go really fast on a modern multi-lane highway. That highway is DDR5 RAM. But by using the older DDR4 RAM, Acer basically put that Ferrari on a slow single-lane country road. They've knowingly created a traffic jam that limits the CPU's true potential, especially for heavy-duty tasks. So, after laying it all out, the amazing gaming highs and the really frustrating design lows, what's the final word? Was this whole thing a genius move or a big mistake? I mean, it's a textbook trade-off. You get gaming frame rates that are just fantastic for the money, and you get that super fast screen to enjoy them on. But in return, you have to put up with a power charger that's too weak, a screen with bad colors, and a CPU that's being held back. So what's the bottom line? Well, the recommendation is actually super specific. This laptop is only considered a good deal if you can find it inside a very, very narrow price range. Look, at its full launch price, it's just too expensive for what you're giving up. You can find other laptops that don't have these kinds of problems. But if you find it on a really deep discount, somewhere in that 82 to 87,000 rupee sweet spot, then it suddenly starts to look a lot more tempting, even with all its flaws. And that really brings us to the final question, which is one for you to answer. Is getting that next generation gaming performance worth dealing with last generation problems? This machine really proves that the future of budget gaming is going to be powerful for sure, but it's also going to be complicated.